terminal.
RCP chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, roll, Atlantic.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Tango Delta nominal.
Flight outside, SC off. Bring in, SC off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jack Beyer, and it's time for another week of NSF Live. Today, of course, I'm joined by two other NSFers, and this week we have Thomas Burghardt. Let's see if I can do this right. Thomas Burghardt.
Hey!
Hey, I finally learned the point right. What's up, Thomas?
What's up, Jack? Good to see you.
Yeah, and also, of course, Chris Bergin.
Hi, yes, I'm representing the people who don't have beards. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so maybe we should have put you in the center, even though I'm the host, for like symmetricalness. I don't know. We'll have to debrief later. But Chris, are you on a sinking ship right now? It kind of like the angle of the camera kind of looks like you're.
Yeah, it's like when we do tilt indicators. I'm probably just leaning gradually more and more. By the end of the show, I'll be like this.
All right. As long as you haven't capsized by the end of it, I think we'll be good. Yeah. So hopefully everything holds on. But I digress. This is NSF Live. Welcome, everybody. I see 5x5s in the chat, so I know y'all can hear me, although I guess we're a little bit late for that. But, of course, we like to answer your questions, so don't forget, we got the whole system set up where if you at NASASpaceflight first, before your question, throw it in chat. We'll see it pop up in some nifty software that Michael wrote. Cool. I think we checked all the boxes, crossed the T's, dotted the I's. Let's jump into it. This week,
there's a lot of cool stuff to talk about this week for sure.
Sure enough, and the first thing is that OneWeb can't launch on a Soyuz anymore, is switching to SpaceX. Who wants to take that one?
I'll start. So this is one of the kind of continuing effects of the ongoing invasion in Ukraine, right? So a lot of this is directly affecting spaceflight, especially international cooperation things, mostly because Russia, Ukraine, and American spaceflight companies or European spaceflight companies, of course, are all there's a lot of those entities that would be affected by different sanctions and things, whatever. So basically, OneWeb, or basically international cooperation between Europe and Russia on launching Soyuz missions for commercial payloads, such as the OneWeb constellation, are being prevented by new sanctions regarding all of this. So OneWeb needs a new launch vehicle, and we kind of talked about when this first happened, they kind of had limited options. The obvious choice is SpaceX Falcon 9 because the fact is that's the only commercially available launcher that is flying regularly to the point where it has spots in its launch cadence to bring on a customer that needs to launch like once a month, basically. That's what they've been doing with Arianespace until recently. Unless you want to wait for another launch vehicle, they can wait for Vulcan to come around, but Vulcan's first flight is this year, still on track for this year, second flight next year. It's going to take some time to ramp up to a cadence where they can add another customer like that. That's the only ULA launch vehicle that's really available for purchase, although in a slightly different context, that might change, and we'll talk about that in the next kind of topic here. But other international launchers that are commercially available, not a whole lot of options. Arianespace has sold all their Ariane 5s. They've sold all their normal Vega rockets, and the new Vega C and Ariane 6 vehicles are still kind of up and coming, not ready to jump on board there. So this is, even it's a little bit surprising because OneWeb and SpaceX might slightly be competitors because Starlink and OneWeb are kind of competitors, although not super directly. The fact is Falcon 9 is kind of the very obvious choice as far as where would you want to launch next. And SpaceX, or Elon specifically, has said in the past that SpaceX would be more than willing to launch other satellite internet constellations, even though they're also operating Starlink. So it's both surprising and unsurprising at the same time. It will be interesting to see that first launch as early as later this year.
Right, yeah, there's kind of some people thinking, well, SpaceX launches Starlink, would they launch OneWeb? And it's like, yeah, Elon has said that they would. It's more of a question of would OneWeb want to give SpaceX money and sort of in that roundabout way, like sort of semi-fund Starlink because they're paying for launches, but no, it's just they need to get their satellites in orbit. And Falcon 9 is the best broomstick around.
I was going to say that, Jack. Can we really hope that SpaceX call the first launch Broomstick 1?
That would be amazing.
That would be just very Elon-like, and I think it'd be quite hilarious. But
what if the first... Go ahead.
I would add, by the way, Jack, I'd add that money is money. If you're a launch provider, which SpaceX are, I mean, as far as they're launching their own SpaceX Starlink launches, that makes sense for them as a company goal, but they are still there on the market saying if you've got a payload, we're going to launch it for you at a certain price and a competitive price as well. So even though Arianespace and the likes of those are booked up on their order books, SpaceX have got the capacity, and you know where that's come from? Reusability. They've got a bunch of cores which have been reflown several times, and they've got the capacity to launch these payloads. So that's where it's all come about, and who wins? Both of them do, really, because OneWeb would be stuck without it.
Yeah, and also OneWeb launching with SpaceX or not launching with SpaceX doesn't actually affect whether or not Starlink gets launched. Like SpaceX is going to launch Starlink no matter what, right? So this is not enabling Starlink, it is only saving OneWeb from this problem that they have. And also, and quite honestly, Falcon 9 is higher performing than Soyuz. It's very possible that they will be able to launch more satellites per launch, and a Falcon 9 launch is also cheaper than a Soyuz launch by most counts. Depends on the exact situation, but the fact is OneWeb might just be saving money here, even though they're funding a competitor in a certain way. Those funds are probably going to Starship, so, you know, OneWeb might not mind anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's the vast majority of the money that it's going to take to get Starlink up and running is not coming from the sale of Falcon 9 launches. It's coming from like venture capital or what have you, right? Or like fundraising rounds. Maybe not venture capital, but like every so often, every couple months, we'll see like SpaceX has raised $600 million in a whatever funding round, and that's where that money's coming from. Falcon 9, selling a Falcon 9 launch for several tens of millions of dollars is paying the bills, but I don't think that's like, that it's definitely not funding Starlink that much. We got some questions coming through, of course. Let's see. Rafi is saying, so I'm confused. OneWeb is a European company, so they're refusing to fly on Russian rockets. Does OneWeb have their own spacecraft, just no rockets? That's the case, right? OneWeb is a satellite operator, not a launch provider.
Correct. And OneWeb, interestingly enough, was originally an American company, filed for bankruptcy. The majority stake is now British, so it is technically a British company, but the satellites are still built in the United States, in fact, right here at the Kennedy Space Center, and then shipped to, which, hey, they'll save money again because shipping well, unless they have to launch from Vandenberg, but still, that's probably cheaper than shipping them all the way to Russia. Either way, yeah, they are a European company. Well, British company. Brexit stuff, whatever the right classification is.
Steady. Yeah, we don't go down that route. My word. You can mention Ukraine, but not Brexit. Yeah, the thing with the government purchase of OneWeb was quite interesting because at the time we all thought they were just basically just putting their hat in the ring at the first thing that was on offer. They didn't really understand what OneWeb was. But it's a larger thing for the UK government. They are looking now to get back into spaceflight properly with the 2 launch sites in the Scotland and the Hebrides, and also Shetland, and also the horizontal launch site down the south west coast. So it's something where we're seeing a big colour change as far as the UK's attitude towards spaceflight. Because I remember, and I referenced it in a tweet the other night, that there was a time where British astronauts had to become American citizens to fly, because Margaret Thatcher and the Conservative government at the time literally made it a ban on being an astronaut because of insurance purposes and what have you. And there's a picture of Margaret Thatcher, without going to digressing too much, next to Ronald Reagan looking at Space Station Freedom, looking completely unamused at it. And that was just the UK attitude at that time. So right now, it's heady days. And we're seeing some real resurgence in the UK space industry.
Good thing. Always good. Cool. Let's see. Good question there from Rafi. Here's one that's kind of like overarching, because we're talking about, Falcon 9 being one of the few rockets that's actually able to take up some of the capacity from these launches being shifted around from Soyuz that you can see right there. So Westy is asking, do you think it might get to the point where SpaceX will have to turn launches down? Just from so many different companies having to switch from Soyuz to something else.
So the way that usually works is when a customer comes to SpaceX or whoever and says, "Hey, this is the kind of missions that we'd be launching. These are the spacecraft." Assume a dedicated mission, so don't worry about rideshare stuff because that's handled slightly differently. Say this is our satellite, so we need, our reusable drone ship recovery Falcon 9 mission is what we need for this ascent profile for this mass satellite, whatever. And SpaceX looks at their manifest and said, "Okay, this is the earliest possible launch date that we have." And then, of course, they'll compare with the customer. And the customer said, "Actually, satellite won't even be ready yet. Satellite will be ready this date." And SpaceX says, "Okay, cool. We'll set that as the launch date." Or if the customer says, cool, satellite will be ready before then, but that's your earliest launch date, so we'll plan for that as the launch date. After this, OneWeb is going to take up several launches in the SpaceX manifest, but hard to know from the outside what that means as far as are they full on capacity now for the next couple years, or is there still room to add more? There's always
Starship,
things like Starship becomes a thing at some point, right?
Starlink, yeah.
And especially with Starlink. So SpaceX will know all of those factors and basically give customers, listen, we're really busy. We're not going to be able to launch you for 2 years or something like that. That's how long the backlog has become or something. And so customers will just know that going into it. And maybe that results in them going elsewhere. And they'll say, well, Vulcan will be available by then. So even though the launch might be more expensive, we can launch sooner on another provider. But the fact is, I mean, we don't have any indication that SpaceX is having problems meeting customer requests. So no, well, I mean, it's a possibility, but we haven't really seen any indications of that.
Cool. Good. Thank you. That was a good answer. Nice, thorough answer. And we have like a sort of a mini battle going on in chat. Mike Smith is saying the benefit for OneWeb is that they'll save a lot of money, and then where is it? Somebody else said, but they already paid for the Soyuz launches, so they're not saving money. But either way, that whole cluster. I feel bad for the people at OneWeb. That
Yes.
can't be a fun time. But yeah, let's move on. I think that's good for the first topic there. How about we talk about NASA awarding CRS flights to SpaceX and Northrop?
Right. Half of this is like very not noteworthy, and the other half is like very noteworthy. SpaceX getting more cargo dragon flights is pretty unsurprising. It is mostly just a reaffirmation that, like, yes, NASA is still going to be flying the space station for many years to come. So we need more cargo flights. So 6 more to SpaceX, Cargo Dragon, Falcon 9, the same deal. That gets them all the way up to CRS 35 for SpaceX. And of course, the next flight is the 25th mission. So there are 11 more flights now that are under contract for SpaceX. The more noteworthy item is that they also awarded 6 more to Northrop Grumman. Now, Northrop was previously contracted for NG 18 and 19. Northrop already has the Antares rockets required for those missions. They are now awarded up to NG 25, and it is not clear how those missions will be fulfilled because, as far as we know, Antares in its current form is done after NG 19 because Russia is not going to sell them any more engines. Also, the first stage is actually manufactured in Ukraine, so even if you had engines, the fact is getting hardware out of Ukraine is obviously not a very easy thing now. So either Antares assembly and manufacturing has to be reworked to the point where you can build everything here in the United States, including engines, or from another country that isn't affected by these sanctions, or you have to launch it on a different rocket. Now, could you re-engine Antares? Possibly. There is still that AR-1 engine that was at one point selected or considered for Vulcan. They eventually went with the BE-4, but Northrop could go to Aerojet Rocketdyne and say, hey, we need a Keralox engine. Could you revive AR-1 and get that to us in a couple years? The NG-19 mission is currently slated for April 2023, which means the next flight that needs whatever new launch service Northrop is going to procure would be in late 2023. So a year and a half from now, basically, ish.
So they've got time, but they need to get
It's
working
not, but
on it.
it's
Like,
time, but
right.
it's not that much time. It's not time to like develop a new rocket engine time, you know? Now, could there be a stopgap between a new version of Antares, meaning Northrop goes to another launch provider, buys a couple launches, and then during that time finishes redesigning Antares and goes back to Antares? That could be possible. Northrop has already launched Cygnus on an Atlas V before. The problem there being that ULA has sold all of their Atlas Vs, so they would need to convince a customer to sell them one of their Atlas Vs, if that makes any sense. Right now, Amazon has 9 Amazon 5s, geez, Atlas 5s already bought for the Kuiper constellation. The fact is, they might not need all 9 of them, especially if satellites are a little bit delayed or something. They might say, well, by the time we're ready to launch 9 rockets, Vulcan will also be coming online, so let's sell a couple of them to Northrop Grumman, and then Cygnus can launch on Atlas V. Other option is they go elsewhere. They could buy Falcon 9s if they really wanted to. Because this is CRS Phase 2 and the Sierra Space Dream Chaser is launching on Vulcan starting next year, hopefully. There might not be as big of an issue if both cargo spacecraft are launching on the same launch vehicle, because you actually have 3 providers, not just those 2. That might be an option that NASA and Northrop Grumman considered. Of course, the odds are Northrop already told NASA what their plan is. Otherwise, these flights might not have been awarded when they were. But it will be interesting to see what that plan is. But those are the kind of options they have.
Got it. It's crazy that Dragon will have flown 35 something missions by.
And that's just Cargo Dragon.
Yeah, if you had asked me when Cargo Dragon came online how many flights I thought it would have, I probably wouldn't have guessed that many. But you know, it makes sense. The ISS needs its supplies. And of course, you said Dream Chaser, so we have to just say really quick, say mini space shuttle. That's Dream Chaser. If you guys don't know what Dream Chaser is, and now
Maybe
we've
space shuttle. Yeah.
yeah, now we've checked the space shuttle box for the stream. Let's see. It would be wild to see the Cygnus spacecraft flying on a Falcon 9 or really anything else. It's it would be an interesting development, but I guess like you said, Antares is probably not, at least in its current form, not really long for this world. Guess who really needs to go to Wallops and catch an Antares launch before that's said and done?
I've had the pleasure of seeing the previous 2 for NASASpaceflight, and it's actually one of the cooler launch viewing experiences around, because you're only like 2 miles away when you're watching the launch, so it sounds really good. And even though it's kind of middle of nowhere, Wallops, it's a cool place.
Hold on, we got a cat guest.
Yeah, sorry, cat distraction. Yeah, but I've heard that. I've heard Wallops is a really cool place to view a launch, so it's on my list, and hopefully we'll get more than 2 more Antares ever out of there. Let's see. I think we're good on Crew Dragon. Let me see if we got some questions here. Here, Pressed Ant is asking, is the reason they ordered more CRS missions due to Russian threats, or is this just sort of the ISS is going to be in orbit, and so we need supplies to it, and we need to get all that arranged?
Yeah, no, this is pretty or not relevant to anything going on with Russia and anything like that. This is just standard procedure. It's time to extend the manifest for the cargo resupply missions.
Got it. And let's see what else we have up here. A couple more questions. Actually, I think, of course, the question queue is all people saying the word cat over and over again. Let's see. Yeah, I think we're good on Crew Dragon. At least all I can see is the word shuttle and the word cat. So I guess my bad. I will lay in it. Let's see. Moving right along, we've got the Artemis human landing system news. Chris, you want to take that? You've been awfully quiet over there.
Yeah, probably a good thing. It's an interesting situation with Artemis, because Artemis, when people relate to that, they think SLS and they think the amount of money involved, and their hearts and minds have been won somewhat with the rollout of the first SLS rocket, and it was an impressive sight. I knew it would be, just from knowing what a rollout would be like with a rocket that size, and it worked. There was a huge amount of interest in SLS all of a sudden, but of course people do appreciate they cost a lot of money. It's not reusable, and it's probably got one of the slowest launch cadences around when it's got projected launch cadence, that is. But Artemis is more than just SLS. It also includes Starship, and we're going back to something that I hope would happen, where the 2 big monster rockets, Starship and SLS, would work together. And technically this is where they are, because this award of the Human Landing System to Starship has brought that mass capability into play now to work alongside SLS for the first lunar landings. And that will then probably play as a template, shall we say, for a contract going forward. And we're seeing that now with the further awards that brings Starship more into this demonstration flight mode. where eventually it will be in a situation where it will land a crew on the moon. That'll be Starship, but it will still be SLS's Artemis program overall. So that's my overall reach of it. We can look into the documentation, we can go through the fine prints and the quotes, what have you. But I think the key point for me is the commercial agency partnership that we've seen being such a success after Shuttle. Try to say that with your teeth in. It really has worked out extremely well. And I think NASA's appreciating that now, that they do need that government support for their agency programs, which is SLS. That's where all the congressional districts and all will have you get their piece of the pie and everyone's happy. And that keeps the funding going. But that funding overall has allowed them to bring in SpaceX and Starship and bring that into a more encompassing human landing system that was originally going to be Ferraris, which I won't say anything about it. So I promise I won't. But the Constellation program, I should say, really, that was a $10 billion lander. The Altair, I think it was called.
Altair,
there we go. That was $10 billion. And it was just a larger version of Apollo. Whereas for Starship, they've got a massive rocket with a huge amount of capability at a fraction of the price, and with the possibility of future missions that go beyond the moon that will really enable NASA's roadmap to be pushed forward, because their roadmap only sees their human landings on Mars in the 2040s, which is too far away for any political planning because several presidents will have passed by then. Yep. So you can't plan that far in advance. So I'm very excited about it. That's my summary. I'm very excited about the fact that NASA and SpaceX are using their two big monster American rockets to fulfill this promise of putting people back on the moon.
I can't wait. And I hope it happens very soon rather than, late 2020s. Hopefully we hit that 2024, 2026, somewhere in there. I'd be very happy.
Well, we've got this new plan now with this new award, and the news being simultaneously that there is now a second moon landing with SpaceX planned with humans on board, which kind of brings us up to 1 uncrewed landing and 2 crewed landings. The first crewed landing would be that Artemis 3 mission as of now, and that's kind of targeted for that 2025 timeframe at this point. They've kind of given up on the 24 dream of when they were trying to make that deadline work, but 2025 is now the new target. And then that second demonstration, and what ties into this current award, is wanting to demonstrate some changes or upgrades or whatever to make it a little more sustainable, a little more recurring, and less moving from prototype to production, to oversimplify it. And the solicitation will also, that comes out in the next coming weeks, will be for a second lander to fly alongside Starship. And I think NASA is really looking at, here's what Starship is capable of. A ridiculous amount of up mass. You could land 12 astronauts if you wanted to, probably more, with a ton of science equipment, a ton of cargo, whatever.
A sweet moon buggy.
Yeah, sweet moon rover, a Cybertruck, whatever you need. And then add a second lander that either complements or simply adds additional capability alongside Starship, that is more in tune with a sustainable and recurring trips between lunar orbit and the lunar surface. Of course, the crews are still getting to lunar orbit via SLS. They're still flying Orion to the gateway. The landers will be waiting there at gateway, and the crew travels between gateway and the surface on Starship and whatever the second lander will be. And my question that I'm going to pose to Chris and Jack here is that what do we think these proposals are going to look like? Who are they coming from? And will they be different from the first round? Because the first round, of course, the 3 main proposals that got considered were SpaceX, the National Team Lander, and Dynetics. Both National Team and Dynetics had pretty strong criticisms from NASA saying, listen, these proposals missed the mark on several key items. And Starship was, again, to oversimplify it slightly, the only competent proposal that was actually put forward. So will these companies take those feedback, and the other companies too, if you look at Boeing or Lockheed Martin or some other companies like that, maybe Blue Origin without a national team conglomerate, who do you expect to come forward, and do you expect them to come forward with something different from the first HLS round?
Chris, go first.
Okay, well, my first thought about returning to, say, less Blue Origin national team, a lot of people left after they lost our award. A lot of key talent left. It's a bit like Crew Dream Chaser, when they lost out on the CC Dev award, the CC2 Dev, which was a landing failure, and that caused them to go to Boeing and SpaceX for commercial crew, a lot of people left. I start seeing tweets from SNC, or Sierra Space, they call themselves now, saying, we've still got a crew Dream Chaser. Well, you need to rehire all those folk back in if you're going to do that. Otherwise, it's still on the shelf as far as I'm concerned. I think Blue Origin may suffer from that, but they could also have the financial power to hire people back in again and restart it if they wanted to. But as Thomas mentioned, I think you need to look at what the criticisms were and solve them before you go back with another proposal. Because I think they burnt a lot of bridges at NASA with their should we say legal advice on taking their defeat with ungraciously, shall we say. So I think they need to learn a lot. Dynetics, they were quite a dark horse. They've not really burnt any bridges as such. I just think they failed on some key points. They may have a better chance of rectifying what was wrong and then going back with a second proposal. So I would keep an eye on Dynetics.
Also worth mentioning that I think it would a Blue Origin led proposal would be very different if it was a Blue Moon design proposal with no shoehorning in, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, and Draper into also be involved. If Blue Origin can vertically integrate their proposal, I think that Blue Origin also has learned that would have actually been better.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
And that's not to stop Northrop and Lockheed from having their own proposals. Northrop comes with a proposal, Lockheed brings one. I think just simply not against any of the individual companies. I simply think trying to combine them all together and have this massive team might have hurt them more than it helped them.
Yeah, the national team thing was always kind of a little bit wonky to me. It just even just the name, we're the national team. It's like we're the Americans. How could you not pick the Americans to build your rocket? It makes no sense. I mean, so yeah, maybe a blue-led proposal would make more sense rather than having to shoehorn in a bunch of different companies and the complexity that is associated with that.
I also do like the Dynetics design. If it's the big thing, if they could find a way to design out needing any sort of drop tank kind of deal and just make it refuelable, that would be that's the only thing off the top of my head that's the one thing this design is missing is just a little less mass issues where they don't have to drop tanks on the way down, because then you've basically got a fully reusable solution very similar to Starship that can go up and down between the surface you need as long as you can keep refueling it.
Which one was the one that was mass positive or whatever? Was that the Dynetics?
Dynetics had their mass budget was suffering some issues. They had not
You're so charitable.
Basically, they had some mass growth that they had not yet fixed. Although I think in the time since then, we have heard that those problems have kind of been resolved and they've reworked their design to get around those things. But yes, that was Dynetics.
I like how charitable you are. You're suffered some mass issues. You don't want that. But that's
ironically,
go ahead.
Ironically, that would have been something to really sort of upset NASA because they are so used to a problem with upmass problems, the weight of a lander, weight of a spacecraft during the Constellation days. Sorry, Thomas, again, but it was a case of they had to do what was called the SBV, which was a zero-base vehicle. They had to strip everything from it to make it fit the mass constraints. And I wonder if somewhere a NASA manager with some long history there would have thought, we're not going through that again. So when you come to a proposal and you've got real restrictions in your mass, that's going to be a real problem for NASA. So that doesn't help. And what doesn't have a mass problem? Starship. You can put as much as you want on there. You can put a kitchen sink on there and they'll still be able to land it. So, that's where they win again.
Yeah. Do you want to bring 3 Cybertrucks to the moon? Bring 3 Cybertrucks to the moon. Yeah. I don't know why you would do that, but hey, you can.
But why not,
Cool. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I kind of weaseled out of the answer a little bit there, but yes, I think Blue Origin will emerge as a submitter or whatever you want to call it, contender, and it wouldn't surprise me if, like you said,
offerer, I think is the right word. I don't know.
Offerer. They'll come forward with a proposal. There we go. I can English. They'll come forward with a proposal, and whether it's Blue Origin or a reincarnation of the national team, either way, like Chris said and Thomas said, I think they're definitely going to have to assess the issues in their previous proposal. Why would you just submit the same thing and expect to?
Yeah. If they do that, they will not be selected again. It's simple as that.
Definitely. Let's see. Paul Kelly asked earlier, if SpaceX has 2 human landings plus the uncrewed demo, which I think, Thomas, you said they do.
Yep.
So
Correct.
that is
And it's not explicitly stated, I don't think, but I think NASA is eking towards the plan of, uncrewed demo doesn't really get an Artemis designation. SpaceX and NASA just kind of do it. But the first crewed demo is the Artemis 3 landing, and then the second crewed landing would hopefully be Artemis 5, because Artemis 4 is becoming a not landing mission. It's actually a gateway only mission, delivering the Esprit module, the European module, to the gateway. So Orion and brings that module to gateway. Crew might do a mission on gateway, scientific research there, but not actually go to the surface on Artemis 4. So Artemis 5 is the second landing, and that is probably the second Starship demo, basically.
got it. I'm still like getting over the fact that Esprit or Spirit or whatever is a module name on the gateway. It's like a really, really good vaporwave band. So every time I see it, I'm like, oh, Spirit, but it's like, oh wait, no, never mind. Let's see. Doot. Here, actually, we got some super chats to do really quick. Musical Wolves, thank you for the support. They say, is DST standard for double shuttle time? Sure. On NSF, yes.
Nice.
Musical Wolves again said, how many OneWebs can fit in a Starship? We're a little bit behind on the super chat queue, my bad.
In a Starship, a lot.
Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
answer there is a lot.
But more likely they'll be on Falcon 9. They might even be launching from Vandenberg because of the inclination these sats go to.
That's right.
And it'll probably be more than they launch on Soyuz, but I don't think we have an exact number, so we'll have to wait and see.
Take that, Polar Launch Corridor.
Hey, don't give them ideas. They'll launch from the Cape anyway.
Oh God, I shouldn't have said anything. Jonathan is asking, can you envision OneWeb launching from the UK? Maybe one for Chris. Is that like
No.
maybe they slap them on a Virgin Orbit launcher one and launch out of the
Yeah.
horizontal launch area or something? Maybe.
I think I'm always scared to sort of like say what's going to come for the UK and in what time scale, because we're still not there yet. They're still building the infrastructure. I think with Virgin Orbit taking Cosmic Girl over there this year, that opens up the possibilities. But I know what our country's like as far as paperwork goes. So there may be some documentation to cover after they do that first flight. But I'd like to see it, but I just don't see it yet. I don't see the demand for that yet. It wouldn't be a UK government thing saying we're launching our satellites we bought from someone else in the UK, but it's over the Atlantic. It doesn't work for me as far as a kind of like a big thing. I think the biggest thing for the UK is to launch its own rocket from its own sail and do a Jim Bridenstine. UK rockets from UK sail. So yeah, that's what I think everyone's hoping for first. So that's my priority.
It would logistically possibly make sense simply because launchers like Launcher 1 or the other small sat launchers have a role to fill for these constellations as far as replenishment goes.
Yeah.
And once the constellation is deployed via the mass launches on Falcon 9 or whatever, if a couple satellites go down, you need to launch 2 satellites. You're not going to buy a Falcon 9. You're going to buy a Launcher 1. You're going to buy an Astro rocket, a Rocket Lab, something or other. And in fact, we've actually seen a contract very similar to that. Iridium contracted with Relativity Space to replenish the Iridium network. And so the possibility of doing something like that might make sense. Whether that means they have to launch from the UK or they launch from Mojave or wherever else, who knows? But
Please launch from Mojave.
I mean, in theory, what if they launched from LAX or something? It's not just a plane taking off. They can kind of fly from wherever they need to.
Yeah, that's sort of their pitch, right?
Yeah.
They actually, I'm pretty sure, I haven't checked FlightAware in like a day or two. I'm pretty sure Cosmic Girl is at Long Beach right now with a rocket under the wing.
I think I saw something of that too. Hold on, let me check.
Per our own Harry Stranger, I think he sent me a satellite image of that a couple days ago. So
Harry's always got his satellite images.
God, I love Harry.
In fact, we're going to talk about them in a little bit with a different story. But anyway.
Yes, that's a little tease for a story coming up later in the show, which also involves Harry, who is just a machine with the satellite views. But yeah, right now it's at Long Beach. So to your point, Thomas. Let's see. JM, thanks for the super chat. They gave us £5, and they say a spirit level for Chris.
Oh yeah, it's not. I don't know what's going on. It's an optical illusion. I'm telling you right now, because I'm quite level. At least
all right, if you say so. Well, you look level, but the room
looks not level.
It looks askew. Yeah, it really looks like you're on
it's
a
an optical illusion.
Oh, that's great. Let's see. Here's one. Now that we're talking about Artemis and whatnot and all of that, Jack Mac is asking, where does the Jared Isaacman missions fall in with the Artemis missions? That's the Polaris Dawn and the Polaris
Yep.
program, right?
So I think that a lot of the tech that has to get demonstrated, especially with Starship, for Artemis might get demonstrated on Polaris missions. There might be some overlap there. But I think Polaris has its sights set on, well, I don't want to say that necessarily. I think that things like the SpaceX spacewalk suit that will be demonstrated on Polaris Dawn has some potential to be used on future Artemis missions, as NASA kind of starts to lean towards commercializing some of their spacesuit stuff as well. So there's potential there. And there's also simply experience to be gained with having humans living on board a Starship. So if the eventual goal for the Polaris program, is that first crewed Starship flight, that might happen before the first human landing system crewed mission, but it'll give them some data and some experience they need to kind of firm up those plans for the actual Artemis flight. So I wouldn't rule that out.
The way I kind of think about it is like, right now we're sort of in, if you think about how we went to the moon in the 1960s, there was like a 3-step process where we had the Mercury program, then the Gemini program, then the Apollo program.
Right.
And kind of right now, in terms of going back to the moon, we are in a Mercury program sort of phase. And the Polaris program is sort of like the modern Gemini, where we will buy down risk and get things sorted out that need to be sorted out so that we can then do the modern Apollo program, which is of course Artemis. And it's obviously not a one-to-one, but
right. The things that are different are still, because Artemis's goals are different from Apollo, and thus the programs that were leading up to it, the Mercury and Gemini analogs, are also way more advanced than they actually were back then. Artemis goal is long-term, long-duration stays on the surface, sustainability, not going there for a few missions and then never going back, but starting a permanent presence, very much like we have done in low Earth orbit. And thus Polaris is kind of formalizing and checking off some technology development things, making sure we know how to do some extra things that we just haven't done in a while, basically. But the Mercury program that we're in right now is actually basically the International Space Station, which is nothing like the actual Mercury program, right? The ISS is a permanent stay in low Earth orbit. We're also, a big part of Gemini was rendezvous and docking. We are very good at that already. That's not something that we need to develop or prove that we know how to do, right? So there's some changes, but that's because the goals of the end program are also slightly different. So it's more advanced and it's a lot of sustainability and kind of commercializing with new vehicles, demonstrating those capabilities.
That's a good photo, by the way.
That was a great photo.
Yeah, thanks. I'm moderately pleased with it. It was super cool to see.
Moderately pleased.
You're your own worst critic, right?
All right.
But it was super cool. That was I'm very thankful I got to be there for some Isaacman flybys, or at least the Alpha Jets. I'm not sure if it was Isaacman or not, but yeah, that's a fun photo. Really good question from Jack Mac there. I'm super excited about Polaris. It's gonna be That's gonna be a real treat. Polaris Dawn is already so cool, and then whatever Polaris 2 and 3 or whatever they end up being called is going to surely be really cool. Let's see. Riley's Mechanical, thank you for the support. They say, have the lunar landing sites been announced? Are they considering recovering Apollo hardware for study? I don't know the answer to either of those questions.
I don't think we know the full details yet. I do know one thing that came to mind about retrieving Apollo hardware. There was an edict from NASA, and it was a government one as well, about avoiding the Apollo sites, and it was aimed at future space tourism. Say, look, these are the areas you are not allowed to go close to. You can see them, you can watch them, but you can't enter a certain zone. And it was a heritage protection site because I think they feared tourism landing rockets in the area of the Apollo landing sites and disturbing the area. And also people then taking souvenirs and whatever.
It's like
Of
there's a
course,
commercial
yeah.
space entity that's gonna like go and scrap the Apollo landers
Can you
and like
imagine it?
sell
Yeah.
dog tags. Like, we're space tags. come buy your used Apollo hardware paraphernalia. Yeah, that would be terrible.
It would be terrible. But the thing I remember is that was aimed at space tourism. Now, if Artemis goes back as an official government program, then maybe there may be some kind of like value in at least taking a camera down to one of the sites and having a pan round and look around and see whatever, rather than retrieving any hardware, leave it in place because it is an international heritage site, if anything else, So maybe there's some potential to take some personal views of it, but not. I don't think they'll be returning anything.
Yeah, and I think this actually can be extended to the Mars as well when you talk about where all the landers and rovers kind of hang out.
Yeah.
When we start sending more recurring missions to these bodies, we're definitely going to be mindful of there might be scientific value of going and like having an engineer go inspect the rover to see, hey, how you doing? Like, let's take a look at this. Or especially at landers that aren't working anymore, because those things you can take them apart and learn everything you want to, right? But on the moon, there's something to be said about preserving those sites, and if there's going to be permanent settlements on the moon, even if there's going to be some in the general proximity of these past landing sites, you want to mark those to be preserved for at least some of them, preserved for future just historical reference, something like that. Because I mean, how cool would it be 200 years from now, you have a family living on Mars, and a school field trip is to go see Curiosity in its final resting place on Mars. Like, just imagine something along those lines, right? That'd be super cool. So something like that. As far as kind of the landing sites for Artemis, we do know that another big difference between Apollo and Artemis is the ability to land kind of anywhere on the lunar surface, because you're making use of this gateway orbit, which is basically a polar orbit. So any point on the surface is actually accessible physically. You're not relying on an equatorial orbit that only kind of gives you the middle of the moon, right? So that to take advantage of that, they definitely want to land at the lunar south pole, where there's some scientifically rich areas where some scientists really are interested in the polar regions. And so I don't know, specifics of a landing site have not been announced. Where the first landing will occur kind of hasn't been revealed yet. That also goes hand in hand with the crew. They have not yet announced the crew for even Artemis 2, the crewed test flight of Orion, before they even get to the landings. Although those might be coming this year. But yeah, so details on those things have not yet been revealed.
Tony Jebsen in chat is saying near Shackleton Crater for landing, I think, but no exact site. Is that the case?
That has been proposed. I do not believe NASA has officially selected an Artemis 3 landing site, though.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm going to Google this in case I need to correct myself.
Yeah, while you
but I'm
do,
pretty
I
sure
don't
it's
think.
not
Yeah,
actually
I
been
think
selected.
there's been generalizations. They've gone for Water Ice. They've gone for Shackleton.
Yeah, I think it's just said like they're probably going to the South Pole, but like not anything more specific than that.
While you look that up, I will do Musical Wolves again. Thank you, Musical Wolves. They say Apollo sites are like lunar national parks. That makes sense. It's like, how do you even go? How do you even walk around one of those sites? Because your boot prints are gonna leave, marks in the regolith. Like, you just gotta keep out. Just gotta keep out. Keep it pristine. Maybe like have some. We can't have a drone on the moon. I don't know, but yeah, you can't. Just stay away. Just keep out. Let's see. And Zeta Infinite says, how many people do you think we could see on a moon outpost similar size to ISS crew or more? I mean, I could see, if we really want to go pie in the sky, I could see like 20 to 30 people.
Yeah.
Maybe
I mean, long term, yeah, kind of as many people as you need, right? Near term, I would guess, like, use the ISS as a reference when thinking about the first crew durations on the surface of the moon and Mars. Think ISS operations, regular crew rotations, direct handovers. The next crew arrives before the previous one leaves. 6-ish people, right? And mostly revolved around conducting scientific research, developing technologies, testing technologies, and operating the outpost, for lack of a better word. That's kind of what you can imagine. And then especially when you go to Mars, this doesn't necessarily apply to the moon, but in the subject of Mars, you're also going to then be adding a wider settlement kind of concept where not everything is about scientific research and technology development. Some people will want to move to Mars simply to live on Mars. And that's going to be a very different kind of plan. But from NASA's perspective, when their goal is research, technology, stuff like that, basically take the ISS model of operations and place it on the surface of a different celestial body.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, that's basically what the ISS is for, right? Is to,
Yeah.
or at least part of it, is to study that stuff and
And the same
develop.
applies to the Gateway station, by the way. Just Gateway will be a little bit smaller because the focus is really on the surface, but Gateway is also similar.
Cool deal. Really quickly, Lance is saying SpaceX will put minimally altered Cybertrucks on the moon. Mark my words. All right, we mark your words, Lance. You are in the book. We'll see what happens. I mean, obviously that would be really cool, and it makes more sense to send something you've already developed and modify it a little bit rather than developing a whole moon lander. But Cybertruck is so heavy, all that stainless steel. It's like, would you not want to put something lighter on them? I don't know. We'll see what happens. That wouldn't
It is
surprise
not
me.
space optimized. We'll give it that.
Yeah, but I mean, with Starship, does the paradigm change to
That's
well, we
true.
can.
I actually saw a comment from a former SpaceXer who was talking about Starship and was just saying, look, everything for spaceflight is designed to be optimized to be light and small, but the fact is, once you start building things like Starship, you can stop designing to those constraints, because the fact is, it can still just do it. So you can design to optimize for different things. You can optimize it to be, more rugged, have more redundant systems, be easier to produce, be cheaper, those kind of things. You can just optimize to different parameters. So that's
Yeah.
an interesting thought.
Alex Reynolds is saying disassemble Starship after landing to make Cybertrucks. Boom. Game over. And here's a more serious question. Garrow is asking, what about Lockheed Mad V for HLS round 2? I just realized I've never said Mad V out loud, and I hope that is how other people are saying it, and now
Yeah.
I'm self-conscious.
No, that's exactly how you say it. You got it.
Okay, good.
Could be interesting. They haven't really proposed it for anything serious ever. It's more of just been like, hey, look, we made some CG renders of what it might look like. Doesn't this look cool? And then everyone's like, yep, looks cool. And then that's it.
The thing with Lockheed Martin, though, is they've got so much experience.
Oh, yeah.
So much
absolutely.
experience. They've built so many good spacecraft that have worked. And that's going to be something to play in their mind, because when you compare with the other proposals, like Blue Origin, if they go separate standalone bid, they've got no track record. Lockheed Martin have got the track record and some.
Right. So yeah, it would be cool. I would love to
Yeah.
learn more about like some more a more detailed proposal for that kind of vehicle. Totally a possibility.
Cool. And let's see, PebMets. What's up, PebMets? One of those names that we see fairly often. Look here, PebMets is like an old school tank watcher. They say, seeing SLS on 39B from Playa Linda, I am feeling the same excitement as when I felt when Shuttle was flying. Something about a NASA vehicle, knowing great things are about to happen. It really is like Shuttle vibes. It's so cool.
Yeah, it was emotional seeing it roll out. I'll give you that.
Cool. Well, let's jump into talking about the rollout then, because that is our next topic.
Yeah.
Is that the Artemis 1 vehicle rolled out to the launch pad? Yay, confetti, like strobe lights, whatever. Yeah, what lasers, like hooray. And Thomas, you were there. So let's talk about this rollout a little bit. I can't even imagine what it must have been like.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the expertise in the room is definitely Chris on this vehicle, but I'm going to just say, seeing it roll out like this. I mean, literally, this photo. I was standing. This is with zero zoom. This is my camera as wide as it goes, right?
Nice.
To get this view, and seeing it emerge. I mean, it kind of hit you when it started to emerge from the VB, and the rocket isn't even out yet, but the first thing we saw was this outline of an SRB and then an orange tank next to it, and we all go, oh, there it is, right? It's the orange rocket. And so, but yeah, and then seeing it roll past is just, it looks so cool. But more importantly than any of that is the culmination of all the hard work and years that it takes and resources. Look, I get it. The fact is, spaceflight programs aren't cheap. Get over it. But this vehicle is going to do something that we have not ever done, and that's launch 4 astronauts in a very capable spacecraft all the way to lunar orbit to rendezvous with a separately launched lander at a space station in lunar orbit. Like, this is it's easy to say, oh, it's different from Apollo and XYZ thing. The fact is, this is simply a new way of thinking about space exploration, deep space exploration.
It's an
And
entirely
this
new
vehicle
architecture.
yeah, this vehicle has a very cool role to play in that, in the at least the first phase of what Artemis is going to begin as far as future space exploration goes. And it was very cool to see.
I'm feeling the excitement, so thank you for that, Thomas. Chris, what do you have to say about the wet dress rehearsal preparations that are going on? Because that is what this rollout is for,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, people are being confused by thinking it's a rollout for launch. It's not. It's a rollout for WDR, and it's going to be rolled back afterwards into the VAB and then prepared for launch. The WDR is extremely important because while this vehicle is full of flight heritage hardware, it's really all been put together for the first time in this configuration. They've got 4 RS-25 engines, which have got a rich history with Shuttle, and they're flight-proven engines. And yet we saw in the first green run attempt, they weren't happy. They took 2 green run attempts to succeed with that test milestone at Stennis. The WDR will finally check all the systems from the ground side to the vehicle side are all ready for a launch day campaign. It will be the equivalent of a launch day campaign for all intents and purposes without an actual launch at the end of it. So it's going to be something that's going to be like a shuttle countdown, which was called S0007. That's what they called them. There were 3-day countdowns. I think this is slightly shorter for a countdown, but it's something where they'll go through procedure. They'll have a hold point. They'll be going towards a countdown target. They'll be able to delay it if need to because it's WDR, it's not a launch window or anything like that. But they will find out so much from the vehicle during that time. Do not be upset if you hear of any problems and having to redo some things, because it's the first time operation out the pad. It's the first time operation 39B with a vehicle there since a shuttle. It's a long time coming. There's a lot of systems got to work right first time, and that's what WDR is about. It's going to iron out the kinks ahead of a launch day campaign. So yeah, I think the main take home is a massive loading of liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen, and basically seeing how the system performs from loading and to actually unloading as well. And then if that all succeeds, they'll roll the vehicle back to the VAB for launch day preparations.
Very cool. Yeah, and if they have to redo something or what have you, like that's what these tests are for. That's the whole entire point. I don't think anyone grumbles at SpaceX when they do another cryo test on a vehicle after doing a cryo test, or repeating any of the testing that goes on in Starbase. Like that's the point of testing. That's the point of all of this.
I think the main thing to bring again is not just the fact that WDR is about the vehicle. That massive mobile launcher you see next to it, that is a huge bit of kit. We talk about the Starbase tower, but this is more complex. Trust me, even with Mechazilla, the ML1 is more complex. It's a very complex system that has to work with all the fueling systems on a clean pad. It used to be a shuttle pad there, but they took all the assemblies down and now uses a clean pad. So literally that tower is a launch pad in its own right on wheels, even though it's crawler. But that's going to be tested, but also the control teams in the launch control center, they will be put through their tasks over the countdown as well. So it's team, rocket, and structures.
Cody in chat is saying, "Are you serious? Chat was bugging out about all the cryo tests, so I guess maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people."
Oh no, none of the cryo test.
Let's see. Quantum Spin is asking, is the foam used on SLS the same as was used on the external tank in the shuttle program?
Similar. It's Sophie foam, which is what you see there in that photograph. You can see it's starting to go browner, like a darker color of orange.
Yep.
When they're first applied, they're creamy orange, but then they tan in the sunlight. Now, the joke about SLS is she's got an uneven tan. So while she's out on 39B, they'll get an even orange tan, be a proper orange rocket. But yeah, it's the same. It's exactly the same stuff that they use on the external tank. The core stage of an external tank on SLS is pretty much an elongated version of a shuttle external tank.
And the reason on Artemis 1 specifically, it's got that uneven tan is because that ICPS, the adapter between the upper stage and the core stage, didn't sit out in the sun at Stennis during the green run test campaign that whole time. So the main core stage got super tan during that time, and the ICPS was sitting in the VAB. So future vehicles that don't go through that green run thing might look a little more even. But yeah, you could see the tan there, just like the shuttle tanks did.
Yep.
Is that the same foam too as used on the deltas, or just similar?
I think it is again a similar type. The one on
Similar.
SLS is like extremely similar to Shuttle, if not exactly the same. I think Delta uses a similar type of product, but it does look a little bit different.
Let's see here. Pink Mouse asking if it'll go back to the VAB. Yeah, it'll totally go back to the VAB. We already said that. But they're also asking about the shelf life on the SRBs. Who wants to talk about that? Because there's a finite amount of time they can be used after stacking. How does that all work?
They are not near the end of the lifetime of the SRBs. Don't worry about it.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Is basically my answer.
It's a good question though, because it was
It
brought
is.
up that there was like a shelf life on the boosters once they'd been mated. That's why they held back the final segment of the mating on the boosters back last year, because they're all thinking, well, as soon as we do this, break the seal, the clock starts ticking. But it turns out it wasn't that much of a constraint. They've got waivers and things like that. So it's safety mode. It's very NASA. They're very 2.5 safety factor, where they'll always exaggerate things by 2.5 to find a safety margin. So don't worry about it. Yeah.
Yep, makes sense.
I say, wait till launch day. Chris said, don't worry about it.
Woo. But yeah, if you guys don't know, the solid boosters are made out of multiple segments. When they mated the segments together to make the booster, that basically started a clock ticking. But like Chris said, they have gotten waivers and can extend the amount of time that they have for that ticking clock situation. Philip, thank you for the support. You say Boeing Space will be back after being kicked out? I'm not sure what we're talking about there.
If you mean, yeah, I mean, the one thing I'll bring up, if it's probably not even anything to do with this question, is that Boeing is deeply involved with SLS. So we've had Boeing's issues with Starliner. Hopefully Starliner is now back on a path to getting back that test launch this summer, or in fact in a few months' time. But also Boeing's got a lot riding on SLS. Boeing is the main contractor for SLS, so that needs to go well as well for them.
Yeah, I think the question was regard to human landing system probably because
right.
Boeing had a very preliminary proposal for HLS and it wasn't selected in the first 3 that were actually like developed before the down select. So we didn't talk about them by name, but yeah, Boeing could very well put together an HLS proposal for round 2, absolutely.
Very cool. One of our we got a member question here that I just saw pop up in chat. And thank you again to all of our members.
Yes.
Let's see. Douglas Richardson is asking, Chris, do they mod the RS-25 to run up to 114%?
Not 14. When they launched on Shuttle, it was 104.5% of rated thrust, with the possibility of going to 107. With SLS, it can go to 109, and that's a rated thrust. Again, people go, 109%? It's 100% nothing, but it's all about the ratings of when they were first designed and what have you. Can they go to 114? They've not, put it this way, they've not tested one at 114 at Stennis, as far as I'm aware, on the A1 stand. They've gone to 109. I think they've probably pushed it a little on the parameters and they've done all the tests with it. But the other question is why? Why would they need to? I mean, they've got enough power with this now, with 4 hours 25s, and obviously the evolutions that'll come with block 1.B, which is the US upper stage, and then block 2 eventually, if that ever happens. The ball boosters, they can find their improvements if they need them there, but as far as they've got this capability right now, it's more than enough. So when you start tweaking the engines a little bit more than you need to, I don't think you do need to. The question might be related to the fact that they will eventually go to the RS-25E, which is the expendable version. You don't have to be too concerned about reuse and protecting the engines for reuse with SLS, because they're going to be used one time. So maybe with RS-25E, I would watch out for that.
Isn't that kind of how they rationale the original going up to 109 with SLS? Simply because you don't need to withhold that little bit of extra margin to fly it again on the next mission?
You're not worried about what its next flight will be now.
Right.
Sad, but it's that's the realism of it, yeah.
On Shuttle, so I'm going to ask a Shuttle question now. When 104.5 was like the nominal thrust level, but then you mentioned they could go to 107. That's for like abort scenarios, right? Like we have to do a transatlantic abort. We don't care if we have to retire this engine after this flight. We need to get the crew somewhere. And so you need a little extra thrust, right?
Yeah, your abort modes were RTLS, which was bad. That was return to launch site. And that's when you probably lost an SME during the actual first stage flight. That's really bad. TAL, which is transatlantic abort. Abort to orbit. And then basically, I think the only one time they ever had an abort was abort to orbit. Ever. The one abort during Shuttle.
There was never an abort once around either, right?
No, that's the other one, which I think they will probably go for TAL in that situation. TAL is when you're going to have an abort stage at that point. You will select landing site, but if you've got enough energy, you can just go back round once back to Kennedy. So that's an interesting abort mode. But yeah, it was amazing. They only had one abort during the entire program of the shuttle history.
Yeah, and I still can't believe RTLS was a thing. Obligatory, whenever we mention RTLS, I have to mention the John Young quote, of course, the astronaut who flew on STS-1, saying, RTLS requires continuous miracles interspersed with acts of God to be successful.
Yeah.
Which you don't want the pilot of your space shuttle to be saying really anything like that, but he's John Young. He can say things like that. But that just goes to show how crazy that was. Let's
Falcon
see.
9 RTLS is a little less crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
mostly because Falcon 9 doesn't have wings or a large asymmetrical
Or a giant
asymmetrical
fuel
thrust
tank to drop,
Yeah,
yeah.
fuel
Or
tank.
people.
Or solid boosters.
Oh man. Let's see. John, thank you for the support there. They say took the day off to geek out with my little one over SLS rollout. An amazing day. That was a really fun day.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you chose to spend your day with us on that Saturday. Musical Wolves, thank you for the support. They say, will there be lots of towels for drying SLS after the wet dress rehearsal? Musical Wolves.
They said, all right, you can't. You said that joke during the rollout stream. I remembered that. You can't repeat the same joke. Come on.
I do.
The same
I get away
jokes.
with it.
What are you talking about, Thomas? What are the 4 towers for?
Oh, gee.
Oh no.
And PebMets again with more support. Thank you so much. I already know I'm gonna like this question. Like reading it 4 words in here. Since there will be no twang when
Oh,
the
yeah.
RT or RS-25's light, like the shuttle,
Yeah.
will there be a slight delay between RS-25 start and SRB start, just to make sure they check out before the SRBs start?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the 6.6 seconds of RS-25 ignition on shuttle was for the checkout. That's what they do. They check out and they move to start position. If you look at a close-up video of a shuttle launch with the engines showing, you'll see the engines ignite, ramp up, and then go into start position. And that's when they were ready for it. But of course, during that ramp up, the stack, because it was 3 engines on one side, was pushing the stack over.
The whole thing
And then it'd
kind
have
of
to
does a
come
wobble.
back. Yeah, the
Yeah.
twang. And then it would launch at 0. So it was basically that ignition sequence. For SLS, they'll still have to do the ramp up and check and start position, but I don't think they'll probably have to wait as long as 6.6 seconds for the twang to finish. Will there be no twang?
Right, I was going to say, because I think the 6.6 came from the twang time,
Yes.
not from how long it took to check the engine.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, gotcha. Huh.
Very
I,
cool.
wonder, I feel like I need to ping Philip Sloss right now and be like, wait, how long before T0 did the engine start?
Yeah. It's a good question.
I'm actually going to do that. It says Discord says he's online, so I'm pinging him.
Do it. Ping him. We'll get some real-time
He's
follow-up
probably
here.
listening, throwing things at the screen.
He's like, wait, no, that's
I should be talking about this.
There is a twang. There is a twang. He's just like banging on the desk. We love you, Philip. Your knowledge is staggering and amazing. Oh man. While we wait diligently to see if Philip will reply here, let's move on to the next question. I think we're good on all of that. Good old SLS stuff. Super excited to see that launch happen. The next topic is sort of salty about it. Harry Stranger spotted via satellite view 2 Falcon 9 boosters on a barge down here in California at Long Beach. This is where SpaceX recovers Falcon 9s. Like, this is the dock that the drone ship comes into. You can see the drone ship right there. You can see the warehouse right there on the dock where they do the refurbishment or at least recovery of the boosters. And right there below the drone ship, you can see very clearly two Falcon 9 boosters on a barge. And those were transported to Vandenberg per our very own Gavin. So, yeah, I don't know what you guys want to say about this one, but interesting to see Falcon 9, which was designed to be road transportable, transported via barge.
Yeah, it's some people are saying, like, is this the first time SpaceX has ever done this? And the fact is, we don't really know. It's hard to track, every Falcon 9 shipment ever. Fact is that they could have done this before and we didn't even notice. But yeah, it just might be any factor of they don't want to use trucks or roads for whatever reason, or they need to ship a couple at a time, and thus the barge is more than one. Hard to know, but it's just an interesting observation from Harry's satellite imagery that we hinted at earlier. It's like, hey, they're using a barge to get some boosters up there, and these went to Vandenberg, which was interesting. So 2 new boosters on their way to the West Coast launch site.
Yeah, and to your point about not knowing if this is the first time this has happened or what, this same barge has been at the dock for previous Falcon 9 recoveries and just sort of been sitting off to the side. And in fact, I think either Gavin or Harry or both of them asked me to take some photos of it, a couple months back when I was down there for a Falcon 9 recovery. And it was just like, yeah, I don't know, it's just a random barge sitting there. And then another Falcon 9 recovery after that, it was gone. And so it's been at the dock before, and it's also been gone before, at least from my experience. So that to me says they totally could have loaded some Falcon 9s or a Falcon 9 onto it, taken it up to Vandy, and no one just spotted it happening yet until now. So very interesting to see this sort of different methodology than we're used to there, and really cool spot from Harry.
Really quick, I do have a real-time answer from our own Philip Sloss, who says that he's expecting the engine start time to be about the same as it was for Shuttle. So I wonder if there's some element of
there is a twang. There must be a twang then.
Clearly, there's a twang. No, there's not. It's not going to. If it twangs, that's a bad thing.
Yes, it will be very
bad. It's a very symmetrical rocket now. But yeah, so about 6.5 seconds ish is what Philip is saying. Looking forward to learning more about that though.
Very cool. Let's see. I think that's about what there is to say about that. Interesting.
Yeah, that was just a cool little thing that we Harry caught on satellite imagery that I wanted to talk about, but it's not a huge news story, I guess.
Just imagine if Harry won the lottery and bought his own satellite. He'd be in it. Absolutely love it, wouldn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. Cool. I think we'll move on to the next one. Let me see if we have some questions regarding that. Looks like
we've got the shiny rocket to talk about, and we've also got a little special segment to precede the Starship shiny rocket. So
we do. We have more cool stuff coming. Let's see. You know what? I think we're good on questions for that. Let's just say cool. They transported stuff on barges.
Yeah. Good news, everybody.
Yeah. Right. Cool. So, do we want to do the special thing first, or do we want to do shiny rocket first?
Should we get out of the way?
Let's get out of the way.
Yeah, NSF's 17 years old now. There's no actual start date. I mean, there should be a start date, but it was kind of like, as you can imagine, just me on my own.
I can tell you when the first article was published. God. I
don't know if that counts because I kind of patched it together before I actually kind of launched it. So it's a bit of a deceiving one, really, when we actually properly started and let people in and so because we have a forum. We had a thing called a forum associated with it, which is nowadays people put a Discord on it, and it's very cheap and easy to do. But we had our own forum with it because I thought it was important to have people discuss what they were looking at, as well as being a news site. But yeah, there's still a reason why we call NASASpaceflight, because me, back in 2005, after wandering around the pit of despair that was a space.com forum, as people who are of an older ilk may remember, was pretty much an unmoderated mess. And people who wanted to talk about Shuttle could do, but they were in complete fights every day. It was ridiculous. The idea was, known as a journalist by trade, there was to start just as a part-time hobby thing, start as a little site up covering Shuttle, and we could do it that way. And we thought, do we call it Shuttle Spaceflight or do we call it NASASpaceflight? I thought, well, if we call it Shuttle Spaceflight, it sounds really cool, but we knew retirement was coming. We knew it wouldn't have any longevity. Right. So we went for NASASpaceflight. And of course, are you NASA? We're still going to get those today, but yeah, I think people know us as NSF mostly. You're going to point out the date, aren't you, Thomas?
Yeah, so this site that Michael's got up is basically the announcement of the website becoming a thing, and that's in February 27th of 2005.
Yeah,
the next article is the first actual news piece, and it's an overview of the status of Space Shuttle Discovery, which was, of course, the shuttle flying the return to flight mission, and that's in March of 2005, which is why we're celebrating the anniversary.
So we're not making birthdays up for the sake of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy. I mean, to say what it started as and what the intention was, it was meant to be like a hobby. It really was. I thought maybe one day it'd be taken on as a serious site, but it was always just a conduit to see how it would do. And it just grew really fast. It was quite impressive, and we brought people with. We took it seriously, and I do not to this day know how we got to where we are now. I have no clue. The amount of talent we've got, not just on the call we have right here with Thomas and with Jack. And I'm not even joking, because I could not. I've always said it. If I suddenly, like Harry with his satellite, won the lottery and had the option of unlimited money to go and hire who I wanted to for a site, I would probably not have any chance of hiring anyone better than the people who've come and joined us. There's no chance. It's a rare thing where I don't take any credit for it, because it's just happened organically, where people have found a site and have got involved with the site from liking it, and then magically have this amazing talents that they've then used on the site and given back to the site. And we've now got this amazing situation. We've got people around the world even, but especially around Boca Chica, around Cape Canaveral, around Vandenberg, all these launch sites. We can send people, professional people out there to do professional jobs and do coverage on our site. I don't know. I do step back quite a few times and think, how did it happen? Because if people ask me what's your magic formula, I go, I haven't got a clue. I don't know how it happened. It's all witchcraft and magic to me. It's sorcery. It's wizards and witches and things like that. I don't know how the heck it's happened. So yeah, I mean, I could go through the history to say I won't bother. There's no point. I'll just go, because the way it's exploded into what it is now is no thanks to me. It's just I've been very lucky, very fortunate indeed.
I do want to point out what Michael's got highlighted here on the present is like talking about the shuttle and stuff, and then like Private Space Venture says it's Virgin Galactic and Burghardt Spaceship One. There is no mention of SpaceX anywhere in this like job advert, basically looking for writers. There's no mention of SpaceX.
I'll tell you one thing, that was one of the first things that happened to us. We were covering Shuttle quite well. We had a lot of NASA people. That's a good thing of having a forum, is you have a forum, you have people who can then communicate back with you. You can then interact with people who are reading your articles. And that became something where NASA people were finding us and Shuttle people were finding us. And we were writing better content about Shuttle and NASA because of that. And that got us more noticed. And then I got an email from an Elon Musk saying, would you like to interview me? Straight up, just an email out of the blue from Elon Musk. Would you like to interview me? Now, I knew he was from PayPal because we're using PayPal as our support structure. So I knew who he was straight away. So
there it is. Here's the article of it.
We did. I mean, the format's gone because it's like so many years ago now. But the fun thing is that is how he got to. He must have, because he says he loves NASA. He'd been following NASA. He'd been following Shuttle probably, just getting experience with this before Falcon 1 launched. And he'd found us, and he'd basically said, "Do you want to interview us?" So we got the first interviews with Elon Musk, and that again helped us. That was probably our key away from Shuttle, our first real kind of like venture into commercial spaceflight, and it's grown since then. I mean, he follows me on Twitter for pity's sake, which is surreal. But you know, it's just I go back to the same thing. I don't know how it's all happened. It's not from any hard work on my part. It's from the skill set people are putting hard work in on our behalf as part of the team. I think that's something people ask me. How do you do things and what have you? I would say if you're going to think of starting a site or a company or something like this, do not make yourself the center of attention. It's a team effort. You'll have structure within the team. You'll have a lot of people who are different, levels of authority and responsibility. But do not make yourself any kind of like flagship name or anything like that. Don't put your face on a thumbnail. Imagine me on a thumbnail. Hello. Don't make it about you. That's the first thing you got to do. Make it about the team, which is natural, especially when they're more talented than you are. But always make it about a team effort, because as soon as you start making it about yourself, you put the pressure on yourself to perform tasks that you may not be performing, might be doing someone else behind the scenes. And the other thing is, it's very important that the success of things when they go right, because there's a lot of challenges with things like this, when things go right, that they get the deserved credit for it because they're the ones who achieved it. So when we thank Mary, when we thank Jack, when we thank Thomas, I mean, look what Thomas is doing, for pity's sake. He's now doing official launch broadcasts on our behalf with Astra. Go back 5 or 6 years, you'd never have thought about that. But that's because we've got a YouTube channel. It's got a very good following and very good quality of content. And we started a YouTube channel because Mary was overloading our servers with Boca Chica videos.
That's my favorite thing. It's like,
Yeah.
so why did you start posting daily videos? Well, Mary's videos were taking up way too much space on the forums.
Nuts.
So
Yeah.
we'll host them on YouTube.
That was literally why we started a YouTube channel, and that's become a major part of what we do now. There's so many things that in another dimension would not have happened, and we would not be having these conversations. We'd still be just a spaceflight site, just doing news articles and what have you. Now we're on this, we're good to live shows, and you got my face on it, for Christ's sake, which is not probably a bonus, but it's the amount of things we've got in the planning as well. I think that's what really is exciting to me, because what you see now is things that have been planned for a long time previously, but we've got it right before we put it live, and we're doing a lot of that stuff now, which I can't talk about just yet, which we'll be adding to what we do in the near-term future, and we'll continue to keep doing that. We'll continue to bring more people in, and thanks to everyone's support, we could not be doing this, because there's only so much you can achieve with a site like this and a channel like this from just pushing it out there and up, and you get some like ad revenue back. It's the memberships that make it, and that's my focus right now more than anything else, is making sure that the membership side of the thing is rewarding those people who are helping us do these things that then pay back people with content. So that's a long way of doing it, is that we're always very much appreciated for our team, but also the people who are there watching our content and getting involved. And the irony is that most of the people have come into our team from being a viewer, from a visitor, from someone who's just looked at the site and liked it. Most of our team have come from there. Jack, what's the story behind you joining us?
I had already been shooting launches for this company I worked for called Super Deluxe, which really wasn't for them. I just used them as a media organization to get accredited. And they were bought by Warner Media, so they went under or were like shut down. So I knew that I needed a new organization to accredit for, and I knew about NASASpaceflight because y'all even then back then were killing it, and I was on the forums and whatnot, and so I reached out to you and said, hey, I'm out here in California if you need somebody for West Coast launches. This was right around the time of, I think it was just before the Falcon Heavy demo flight, and so I started basically around Falcon Heavy demo, and that was sort of how I got in. I'm still baffled that you wanted to bring me on, but thank you for that. I think my original message to you was like, I like planes, so maybe I could do something like photograph a bunch of NASA planes or something. I don't know. Like, it's just completely just like, I like NASA, but to your point, that's where a lot of us got sort of the start. Yes, I like planes, and that is an F-22.
Check out Jack's Patreon. It's cool.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Thomas.
Yeah.
My Patreon is a shambles right now. I'm a bad person, and I need to get that sorted out. But I digress. Thomas, what's your NSF origin story?
My story is I was reading NASASpaceflight, so I was an aerospace engineering student and still am, fun fact. But I was reading NASASpaceflight for space as one of many space news sources that I was reading, and at one point stumbled across this forum post that I think is what also got Michael involved with NASASpaceflight. Is NASASpace are looking for people with not necessarily journalism experience, looking more for people who are passionate about spaceflight and have some technical knowledge, and would be interested in writing. And I was in the middle of transferring to my current university, Embry-Riddle, and was like, yeah, I'll shoot Chris Bergin a message and see what could possibly go wrong.
Hello.
And I remember Chris asked me, he's like, what what specifically about space are you interested in? Because everyone says they want to write about SpaceX, and I'm like, well, yeah. And he's like, what broader are you interested in? And I think I kind of answered it as a
Ares 1.
I did not say Ares 1 because I didn't want to get myself fired immediately. Had to get in the door first, and we'll worry about that later. No, I think I said something like I mentioned all the upcoming, like the next generation things. So I talked about SpaceX, Blue Origin, Artemis stuff. And when I mentioned Blue Origin, Chris Bay said, "Oh, we haven't done an update on New Glenn status for a while." And so I was like, "I can give an update on New Glenn status." So he told me to take a couple days. I wrote up an article, and when I sent Chris the draft, he said, "Oh, this is really good. I've given this a quick sub edit, and we're gonna push it live at the top of the hour." And he sent me this at like I don't know 11:59 or something,
Oh, God.
and I was like an hour from now or like right now, and he said right now, and then he tweeted it, and so I was like, oh, all right. And then I was a published writer, and so yeah, I got involved with writing, and that eventually became editing, eventually became commentary, camera work, a whole bunch of other stuff, and now I'm a news
Yeah.
director. But yeah, it was that was 3.5 years ago. So
I think that's one of the interesting things is technically we're all hands on deck. You have to be. There's no 9 to 5 with this sort of thing, and everyone's learning so many different talents along with their own skill set that they're used to bringing to it. You know, I mean, I can't say that because I just come on and just put my face on and talk about Shuttle for a bit. But so many of the team are doing so many different things now from what they were normally doing. It's quite diverse. I mean, the trick with all this is to make sure people don't burn out. And that's not easy because there is so many hours involved. But that's the forward path, is just continue to keep growing it. So if you're somebody who identifies with what Jack and Thomas just said, we've got a contact form. If you've got a skill set, I mean, we can't take, as much as we'd love to, we can't take kids from school and say, we'll train you. But if you've got a skill set, something you're passionate about, you don't have to have like master qualifications, but as long as you're into spaceflight, get in touch. Just say what you're good at and what you're good at. We never know, you might be eventually one of these shows.
I'm sitting over here chuckling because you said we'd love to take kids from school. Now, I mean, but I get your point.
Yeah.
But for real, that like we all started out. I mean, it's an interesting model, right? Because to shoot launches, you need to be part of a media organization, and NASASpaceflight is a media organization. So then you get media professionals who want to be accredited to to work with you, and then we've all sort of spiraled into different specialties and whatnot. The fun part is I'm doing for NASASpaceflight now what I did for Super Deluxe and Disney and other I ended up like switching to photography and then going back to what I had previously been doing in the post-production world. It's like, okay, every time is a flat circle. But yeah, I don't know. I really think it just bears repeating how far we've come.
wow.
And
Who's that
video.
fresh-faced Chris Gebhardt?
if you want a taste of vintage NSF, check out the Prestamico documentary on YouTube, and in that you will see a very baby-faced young Chris G and some of the OG NASA spaceflight crew, and it's just sort of like a not a day in the life of a NASA media photographer, but like sort of like life in the life. I don't know, an examination of the media activities back then at the Cape, and it's amazing. It's an amazing little thing.
Fun fact, this is the media like workspace that's at the press site, and it looks exactly the same as it did in this video.
Wow.
The desks are exactly the same. Pretty sure those chairs are exactly the same.
Sure enough.
Yep.
So yeah, that is the anniversary of NSF. Thank you to everybody for watching what we do and supporting what we do and hitting the like button and being subscribed. If you're not subscribed, hit subscribe. And of course all the members. We could not do all of this without the members and everything that they do to support us month to month and allow us to do some of those long-term planning and thinking things that Chris was talking. I don't want to get us in trouble. I don't want to get myself in trouble. But there's cool stuff.
I'm normally the one who
works.
leaks. Yes,
There's
I'll be
cool
careful.
stuff in the works. Okay, just wait for the cool stuff. It's coming. All right. That's all I will say about that. Anyways, let's see. Westy the third, thank you for the support. They say no question, just thanks for the awesome coverage. We appreciate that, Westy. Alex, thank you for the support. They say happy birthday, buy yourself something nice for your birthday. Douglas Richards, thank you for the support. They say, Chris, did you know the shuttle OMS tanks had glass probes for measurement? I tested some years ago. Chris, did you know that?
No.
Well, now you do. All right, moving
no,
on.
but I should.
We got to get to Starship.
Oh, yeah.
Douglas Richards, thank you for the support. They say, I salute you all for the knowledge you deliver professionally. Well, me, not the professionally part, but everybody else. Thank you so much, Douglas Richards. And, of course, Musical Wolves saying, is there a cake shaped like a shuttle? Oh, that's a missed opportunity.
Oh.
We should have done shuttle
Next
cake.
year, next year.
Next year.
All right, so let's
NSF
talk.
turns 18 next year. It's a big milestone, you know?
Yeah, there we go. I can buy cigarettes, and I don't know. I'll stop there. Cool. Moving on to Starship. Oh God. I'm fired. Let's see. Starship. Let's talk about Starship. But first, okay, well, yeah, we'll go with this. How
Yeah,
about
Michael's very strongly hinting what he wants us to talk about next.
the FAA has announced that they are going to delay the announcement of the PEA again until end of April. That's the little underline there we got. I mean, I don't think this was completely unexpected.
Right.
What's your take on this, y'all?
This is just going to perpetually be a month away until it suddenly isn't.
Yeah.
But the fact is, they're not providing timely updates. It's an up to, well, the deadline's coming and we know that we're not going to make it, so we'll push it back another month. But this is, of course, just the assessment that precedes hopefully a launch license. Hopefully the assessment comes back and says they're good to go. The other option, it comes back and says there's some work that needs to be done, maybe a more detailed environmental impact statement kind of assessment before Boca Chica can support orbital launches. So that's what we're waiting on from this side of things. It is, again, just worth reiterating that right now it's not the long pull towards an orbital attempt. Technical readiness still is, from everything we can tell. And part of that is the fact that they are now waiting for Raptor 2 vehicles for the next orbital flight test. So it's not going to be Booster 4 and Ship 20. We're now looking at Booster 7 and probably Ship 24, and that is coming from an Elon tweet saying that the first orbital flight will be with Raptor 2 engines, which not compatible with the old vehicles. Doesn't mean Ship 20 is completely gone from flight test, because there was that idea from forever ago, like, do another high altitude hop of some kind, go hypersonic, whatever.
Please.
That would be super cool. But the first orbital flight is not going to be Ship 20. So technical readiness, they're working on getting those engines ready. They also have to finish kind of proving out the ground equipment and all those things. But that's where we're headed now. And that environmental assessment is, of course, a big piece of news to keep an eye out for when that does come out, because that's one of the criteria needed for that orbital flight.
Yeah, so we have another month on the environmental assessment clock. They could add another month in sometime in April, maybe near the end of April. They could, they could announce at the end of April. Hopefully that's what they do. But like you said, there's things that have to get done first before they can launch anyways. Even if they had the launch license today, as it stands, they're waiting for vehicles that can support Raptor 2. One of which you're looking at right there, that is Booster 7 in the high bay, which of course uses Raptor 2. And it has gotten something called chines. And chines are not aero covers. Chines are an additional thing on top of being an aero cover. Aero cover to me is kind of just like a dumb surface that shields something underneath it from like airflow and whatnot. Whereas a chine is actually an aerodynamic surface, sort of like a part of a wing. So yeah, that's what we're looking at here. That's kind of the major development with Booster 7 is clearly a much different design than Booster 4. I think these are not trivial to design the booster around. Previously, all of those COPVs that we're looking at were in a ring around the base of the booster, and all of that has been redesigned. I'm sure there's structurally some stuff that had to be redesigned in order to accommodate this change. And basically, why have a dumb aero cover when you can have a smart aero cover, for lack of a better term, that actually does some work for you, induces more drag on the way down, and basically results in you needing less fuel for landing burn. Because if you have more drag on the way down, then you are going slower, and then you need to use less fuel to land, which means you can use more fuel to launch payload into orbit, which means these little nubs on the side of Booster 7 ultimately are helping increase their payload to orbit by some clearly meaningful amount, due to the fact that it probably took a large amount of redesigning to get them on there. There, that's the chine. That's the chine summary. And I
also worth mentioning, this is not like a unheard of concept. If you look at the New Glenn first stage, they have a more exaggerated version of this. It's not a smaller aero surface. They have like pretty much bigger aero surfaces, but the concept is the same. Having some lift and drag on the way down to help reduce your terminal velocity so that your landing burn requires less fuel. So it is, yeah.
Yeah. And I think on New Glenn they're called strakes. I'm still, I don't know where we are on the chine versus strake debate. And I know some people are saying, oh, well, chine is the part where the thing meets the hull, and it's a chine. It's a chine. I'm sorry. It's a chine. I'm just gonna leave that there. So
Elon
yeah,
will
that
tweet
is
their strakes in 24 hours. And
yeah, of course, of course. So yeah, that is what's going on with Booster 7, and of course, Booster 7 again uses Raptor 2s. I don't think we've seen any Raptor 2s delivered, or if they have, they've been quiet about it. But that sort of goes back to that Elon tweet, right, about May readiness for an orbital attempt. Let's see, Booster 4, which uses Raptor 1s and can't really be modified for Raptor 2s, was methane tested recently. Let's see, we're scrubbing through the video here. That's a common dome section. Look at it go. Wide bay construction. Let's see. Yeah, so Booster 4 was tested with methane for the first time. We thought it was cryoproofs, but then SpaceX tweeted about prop loading. Going through the list here, there's been quite a few, like, not necessarily flashy developments, but like for them to be pumping methane into a booster on the orbital pad is quite a development. Let's see, and then of course,
that's just a sign of that ground equipment getting tested and verified to the point where that side of the system is ready to support launch readiness. Because there's vehicle readiness, which is what Elon's talking about in that tweet, versus getting Raptor 2 engines and the boosters and ship that go with them ready to go. But also there's all the ground equipment, there's also the regulatory approval. So all of those things have to fall in line to actually conduct an orbital flight. So.
Yep, and so of course that methane load happened when ship was on the booster, and I think it did anyways. No, we're looking at it now, and ship is off
no,
the
yeah,
booster.
the ship was destacked by then.
So booster is now off the pad as well. They lifted it off the orbital launch mount the other day after doing all of these tests, and I guess now we expect Booster 4 to be rolled back to the launch site of the production site or the rocket garden. But either way, it seems like that is that for Ship 20 and Booster 4, unless they do, like you said, a like hypersonic test with Ship 20 or something. But that is sort of the state of play. Is now Booster 7 is going to roll out to the launch site, probably get tested on that. What do we call it? The structural test stand.
Yeah.
I've seen some people call it the can crusher, or the there's various names for it, but I guess that's next up for what we expect to see at the launch site. The other day we saw Booster 7 sort of shuffled back and forth in the high bay, like it looked like they might roll it out, and they didn't.
And then they didn't.
Just ended up putting some Booster 8 parts in the high bay. So that is sort of what was going on at the production site. I mean, Booster 8 already getting built with Booster 7 getting finished up. So that's kind of a example of their build cadence there. Didn't Elon say something they want to do like a booster a month, or was that a ship a month? I forget.
No, I don't remember.
I just remember from the presentation he did recently, he was talking about turnaround of hours for launches rather than a production cadence. But the new wide bay, which we're seeing growing, just shows what kind of cadence they can produce boosters and ships going forward. So I think maybe that's not too far off. It might even be more than that. Need them for the tankers. Remember, for HLS, they'll need all these tankers. So they need that, capability to build vehicles, not just in South Texas, but also at Florida. So there's lots to come yet.
Yep. I'm still kind of bummed that Booster 4 and Ship 20, like we went the 420 flight on 420, but hey, maybe some point in the future we'll get our magical meme launch. Let's see. There was the ship nose cone barrel. We think it's the Ship 24 nose cone barrel with the payload bay door. And that was a really good spot by Mary the other day. We've seen it kind of under construction for a little bit. The other day, Mary got a really nice shot of it. Let's see if Michael can find it. I'm putting him on the spot right now. But
that gives you a good indication of where they're thinking for initial operational flights. I mean, even test flights.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they utilize their own Starship flights, Starlink launches with their own test flights. And it's incredible. Look at the test dispenser.
Something I've seen people ask is basically, how would they, like, why would this be on Ship 24? Because if the initial flight is not orbital, like they're just going to kick a bunch of mass simulators out the door and see if, to test that stuff. But it wouldn't surprise me if the initial flight of Starship, if that flight profile has changed. Because the whole, like, almost orbital but just barely not regime was sort of when like a year ago or some months ago when we were still looking at 4 and 20, and perhaps with a later booster and a later ship, they're more confident in the thing's ability to deorbit itself. Maybe we'll see a change in flight profile. But either way, yeah, that's the payload bay door right there, or the payload bay section, whatever you want to call it. But it's got a dispenser in there that we saw lowered in the last couple weeks, and so
Yes.
it's got some sort of mechanism in there. It's not just a cutout in a barrel like we've seen previously. Like this is actually seems to be functional hardware that will fly. Fingers crossed. Ship 24 flies. Please, can we get some more flights, please, please?
Yes.
Yeah, so that is the cargo door. We talked about Booster 7 being close to rollout. We talked about Booster 4 not flying. Ship 20 maybe flying, but probably not because they're just Raptor 1s. Raptor 1 is now old news, right?
Yep.
I mean,
Do we have any questions coming in? Because that would be a good way to see what
Yeah.
else to
let's
ask
see.
about.
Let's see what we got here. Somebody vamp while I look for questions.
Oh gosh.
I would
What-
just add that the actual what we're seeing now with the section is such a small cutaway. It's
Mhm.
not going to be like the Chomper, which we've seen. The Chomper is something futurized where they're going to actually happen up like an alligator mouth. But
Mhm.
this, the Starlink one, they're going to just throw them out the side in this small little area, like a pest dispenser. And you can imagine how many Starlinks they can launch on a Starship. That would be something to watch, an onboard camera just watching boop, 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 boop. Be endless amounts of Starlinks just thrown out. Very much different from what they do on Falcon 9, where they just literally just plonk them out in one go and they'll separate over time. I hope that happens. I really do.
Of course, they'll eventually have to go to like a payload door if they want to launch more like standard satellites that aren't their Starlink
yes,
satellites,
yeah.
right? So it's interesting
Squeeze them
that they
through.
like didn't go like. I wonder if this was simply an easier short-term thing, where like, yeah, we can design our Starlinks to be deployed this way, and later down the line we'll have a proper payload door, or is this the long-term like gives us more Starlinks, like able to fit more Starlinks in if we deploy them this way, and we'll have a different variant for non-Starlink satellite launches.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. They sort of seem to be on that design path for Starship. It's like, what's the quickest way we can get something
Right.
done to accomplish the objective for that specific vehicle? And
Yeah.
anything else that we need to learn down the line, we'll learn down the line. I mean, it just makes sense. And the first missions that Starship is going to do operationally or even test-wise is going to be Starship launches. So why not get that design knocked out and go on from there? It makes me start thinking like, okay, so we know there's a specialized version of Starship for human landing system.
Mhm.
We know there's a specialized Starship for tanker missions. Is basically one of the Starship variants just a Starlink variant?
Right. Yeah.
And
But-
then when there's an actual cargo Starship for whatever satellite or telescope or what have you, is that its own special variant? Like, it's going to be really interesting to see how the system matures. Let's see. We do have some questions. Gone to Tex is asking, why do they use the crane on Booster 4 instead of the chopsticks? That's a really good question. I mean, I don't think we know
Yeah.
yet.
No, we don't know, but I think there's something to do with they're still learning with Mechazilla and the chopstick system. They've worked out they can use it for ship pretty much without difficulty now. Several times they've tested it. But for the heavier booster, I think they're still just working things out. And while they've got the crane there, they might as well make use of it. It's one of their purchase ones. It's an LR 11000, I think it's called. It's an impressive crane, but I want to see what happens with Booster 7 now. Booster 7's going to roll out hopefully tomorrow. And then they'll have the option of seeing what they're going to put Booster 7 on and with what, be it chopsticks or the crane. Or if they'll go to the structure first, the test structure. We wait and see, but I just hope they roll out tomorrow.
Yeah, fingers crossed we do get a rollout tomorrow.
Yeah.
That'll be something really, really interesting to see. And it could be that Booster 7 pulls an Artemis and gets rolled back after being tested at the launch site. I don't think we expect to see Raptor engines on it, for example.
Nope.
In fact, the other day when
Right.
they moved it out of the high bay, I don't think there was Raptor engines on it.
No engines on it. No
Yeah.
grid fins.
So maybe it'll go to that structural test stand and be pressure tested
Yeah.
before rolling back. But yeah, you're right. No grid fins. And talking about those chines again, there's clearly lines or like mounting points for 4 of them, and I think there's only one that has been installed. So At some point, they're going to have to install the rest of those aero surfaces as well. So, lot to come for Booster 7, but it's getting really close to done. Not sure why they lifted Booster 4 off with the crane. We'll just, I mean, I think you're right, Chris. They just probably weren't ready for it yet with the chopsticks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to butcher your name, I'm sorry. Koa Kiro-kun is saying, it'll be interesting to see them deploy a wheel of cheese out of the payload bay door.
How big a wheel of cheese?
It'll be a Starlink-shaped wheel of cheese. How about?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there you can see Booster 7 outside of the high bay. You can see the chine there on the left side. I mean, it's crazy how the booster is following the same the same flow as the ship, where the initial ships looked kind of sketchy compared to the later ones. Booster 7 is looking really, really good.
Looks nice, yeah.
Let's see. Thomas Gale is asking, does SpaceX have a plan to get around the 5 maximum launch limit in the draft assessment?
I think that is just indicative of Boca Chica is a R&D facility, and the long-term plans are more more rapid launches from places like Cape Canaveral and maybe even those offshore platforms. But the fact is, Boca Chica Starbase is an R&D facility that needs a low flight rate.
Yeah, I'm very curious how that's going to play out. It makes sense, and it matches what Elon said at the recent Starship update, that Boca is sort of more the R&D spot, and the Cape is sort of the operational spot. It sort of changes how we've been thinking about Starbase, or Starbase Boca Chica, as I think it should be called now, because there's also Starbase. There's also Starbase Canaveral, or Starbase Kennedy, or Starbase Florida.
Cape. Starbase Cape Canaveral sounds good.
Starbase Cape Canaveral. It's kind of a mouthful, but I like it. But yeah, like Michael's saying in our little Discord here, the plane is called the Cape, which is like, yeah, we want to see them launch out of Boca a lot, and hopefully we do. What I want to know is, do you think they'll ever launch humans from Boca Chica, or do you think that'll be reserved strictly for Kennedy?
Test flight from Boca. They could develop the sort of crew access arm and all that kind of architecture at the Boca Chica launch facility. They could launch test flights of the crew variant from Boca. They could even conduct crewed test flights from there. But I think if you get to operational missions, those kind of flights might occur in Florida.
Makes sense. Let's see. I'm still bummed. Booster 4 and Ship 20. It's like, we talk about, like, with Artemis rolling out, how it's like the culmination of so many people's hard work, and how that's important. Imagine being working for SpaceX at Boca and spending a year building different vehicles that don't fly. That's got to be frustrating. That's got to be like, come on, just fly one of these, darn it. Let's see, Zeta Infinite, thank you for the support. They're saying, how much could SpaceX realistically scale Starship up past the 12-meter, 15-meter already discussed diameter? Said they managed to produce a Raptor V3 engine, which is higher performance than V2. Like button prompt. Thank you for that, Zeta.
If they're going to advance the engines, they're going to make them smaller in outline, and more powerful, so they lead less, maybe. So I think the diameter increase is not really something we should even think about just yet. I think the forward path will be to continue to streamline Raptor to Raptor 2, which it is now, which is what's happened between Raptor 2 and Raptor 1. And maybe a Raptor 2.5, Raptor 3 will be even more streamlined, but even more powerful at the same time as well. So you're not worried about diameter too much, you're worried more about the power of the engine and reliability of it. So I think that's the first thing, the engines to be modified first, and then to worry about the diameter, which I don't think they need to do just yet.
Yeah, any kind of diameter change is way, way, way down the line, given that
Yeah.
they'll have to build a new launch table even, right? Like everything right now is sized for that 9-meter diameter, and it's like one of those things that maybe could happen potentially years and years down the line, probably more than 5, maybe like 10-ish plus. Because like once they build and get Starship 9-meter up and running, they're going to ride that wave for a good chunk of time until they absolutely need to build something different or even bigger.
How about triple core? Triple core boosters.
Yes, it needs
That'll
to happen.
Be nuts.
Starship heavy.
And you still don't have a flame diverter.
99 engines.
Oh my gosh.
But, I'm going to put this out as an upper bound on diameter change, though. The Sea Dragon had a diameter of 23 meters.
Ooh.
So.
Good old Sea Dragon. So insane. Let's see. CBTATC. I don't even know how to pronounce that, but thank you for becoming a Red Team member, and thanks again to all of our members for the support. At Red Team, you get a chat emoji. I'm going to throw something fun in chat here. How about we do we're talking about Starship, so I'll throw some Starship emojis in chat. And you get preview videos, you get photos on the YouTube channel, and all kinds of good stuff at Red Team. At the different levels for membership program, there are different perks, which we'll talk about one of those perks in a minute here, I imagine. But at Capcom and above, there's access to our Discord, all kinds of cool stuff. So that's the membership program if you all didn't know. I suspect you probably know, but if you want to support us month to month and really help out what we can do, then that is a way to do it. So thank you to CBTATC. How do you even pronounce that, for becoming a Red Team member? A couple more super chats, and I think we will wrap it up for the day. Pebmets is saying, and thank you for the support, Pebmets. Don't walk on the keyboard, cat. Oh my god.
Bye, Jack.
Yeah, right. If I cut off, you know what's happened. For Starship, if forced to Kennedy Space Center, would it make sense to lease one of the available high bays in the VAB? NASA has assets that SpaceX could use instead of building one from scratch. You would think so, but then there's problems like you can't even go into the VAB.
Yeah.
You can't even go into the VAB with cell phones, right? Because of the stacked solid boosters. That's like a whole restriction. So who knows? Maybe they ended up not being able to use the VAB, or maybe they do. I don't know. It'd be really cool to see a Starship roll out of it, right?
I think Roberts Road has kind of answered the question for us now. I'm sure there was discussions to use the VAB, one of the high bays at some point, but now with Roberts Road's outline, the footprint, they're going to build a facility there. I think that's everything they need. It's brand new. It's owned by them, and it's sort to their cater to their needs. So I think that's where it's going to go. I don't know what Thomas is laughing at. Is he laughing at me?
No, I can't say it. Or something in the back channel.
The cat is fine. The cat is fine. Everything is fine. Oh man.
I don't know if that came over the air or not.
I think something tells me it did. Let's see. Marwin, thank you for the support. They say Crispy Tripod Fund. Also, when will we see two tower segments built for the next Cape flyover? We will see that hopefully soon. Definitely keep your eyes open for the next Cape flyover.
Yeah.
Musical Wolves say no lame diverter delaying the environmental review. I like it, lame diverter. And Torben, thank you for the support, Torben. That's very generous of you. Very awesome of you. Very awesome to everybody for supporting what we do and supporting NASA spaceflight for 17 years now.
17 years.
Yeah, and chat is saying yes, it did.
I had hair when we first started this.
You had hair?
Yeah. No, I didn't. Not 17 years ago. It'd gone by then.
Oh my god. Well, I think that's about all the excitement we've got planned for y'all today.
Thank you everyone for tuning in though. This has been a fun episode for sure.
Indeed. Thank you everybody for watching as usual. Thomas? Thank you.
Nope.
I botched the point again.
You had it right the first time. Why'd you mess it up now?
Thomas, thanks for being on this week.
Always a pleasure. Happy to be on here, Jack.
And Chris, thank you for being on this week. Always good to see you and your bald head. Bald team. I'll see you at the next bald guy meeting. What is it, Tuesday?
Tuesday at 8 p.m., yes.
Okay, yeah, I'll see you there.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, with that, I think we'll let y'all go. And as always, thank you to our launch directors and flight engineers. We were talking about the member perks a second ago.
Yeah.
This is one of the member perks. If you're a launch director or flight engineer, to the two higher ends of the membership program, and you get your name in the
new perks coming soon
in the credits. New perks coming soon, including me eating hot, spicy food.
Oh my god, that's been a trend recently.
That wasn't the perk I was thinking of, but there you go.
Oh my god. Okay. Thank you everybody for watching, and we will see y'all next week.
See ya.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
Our chamber pressure looks good. Toggling up. Roger, roll, Atlantic.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Echo Delta nominal. Flight down, right, speed off. Bring in, SC off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.